So today we're going to deep dive into the lean startup,
Oh, yeah.
which is kind of like, the Bible for anybody who wants to build a successful business in today's world.
Yeah.
And it's pretty wild to think that, you know, big companies like Dropbox and Instagram,
Yeah.
like they didn't start out perfect. They
Yeah.
started as experiments, just testing things out,
Is
seeing
that-
what people wanted.
Yeah.
So we're going to break down all those core principles of the lean startup
Yeah.
and hopefully give you a nice shortcut to understanding it all.
Yeah. I think the lean startup is really interesting because it kind of like flips the script on how a lot of people think about businesses.
Oh, yeah?
Like traditionally, you spend all this time trying to craft this perfect product.
Right.
But the lean startup is more about embracing the unknown
Okay.
and treating your startup like a scientific experiment.
So instead of just jumping in head first, you're kind of dipping your toe in the water first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about this idea of validated learning. So you're actually testing your assumptions in the real world
Right.
to see if your idea actually solves a problem.
That makes sense. So like Dropbox, for example,
Yeah,
they didn't build that whole platform before testing the waters.
right. Drew Houston, the founder, he made this really simple explainer video
Okay.
that just showed how Dropbox would work.
Interesting.
And it was genius because it focused on the pain point that everybody has.
Oh,
The
yeah.
hassle of sharing files.
For sure.
And he presented the solution in like a really easy to understand way.
Okay.
And thousands of people signed up for Dropbox before it even existed.
Wow. So he basically validated his idea without even writing a single line of code.
Exactly.
That's amazing. But there's got to be some sort of framework for this, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You can't just rely on a viral video.
Right.
So what else is there?
So at the core of the lean startup methodology is this cycle that they call the build, measure, learn feedback loop.
Okay.
And that's like a constant engine for improvement.
Okay, so break that down for me.
All right, so first you build.
Okay.
And what you build is a minimum viable product, an MVP,
Okay.
which is just like the simplest version of your product that tackles the core problem.
So you're not going for perfection right out of the gate?
Yeah.
You just want to get something out there quickly?
Exactly. And then the next step is to measure.
Gotcha.
You track how people are interacting with your MVP.
So like not just counting website hits?
No, not just vanity metrics.
Okay.
It's got to be data that actually reflects your progress towards your goals.
So like how many people are using a certain feature or something?
Exactly. And then the third step is learn.
Learn.
You take all that data that you gathered,
Mm-hmm.
you analyze it,
Okay.
and then you decide, do we keep going or do we pivot?
Right.
And Instagram is a perfect example of this.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that they started out doing something completely different.
Yeah, their original product was this really complex app called Bourbon.
Oh, okay.
But by looking at the data,
Yeah.
they realized people were only using it for sharing photos. So they decided to ditch all the extra stuff,
Right.
focus on what was working.
I see.
And that's how Instagram was born.
So they adapted to what people wanted
Yeah,
instead of what they thought people wanted.
right.
That takes some guts to just completely scrap your original vision.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of this whole lean startup approach.
Yeah.
It's all about agility and responding to what's actually happening in the real world.
It's like saying, hey, I had this idea, but the market's telling me something different, so let's listen.
Exactly.
That's really powerful, and it reminds me of something we talked about earlier,
What's that?
like that science experiment analogy.
Oh, yeah, Rands, the author. He really emphasizes using the scientific method to your advantage.
Okay, so how does that work in practice? Give me an example.
So let's say your hypothesis is adding this new feature will boost user engagement.
Okay.
So you build a really simplified version of that feature, maybe even just a mock-up,
Okay.
and then you gather data on how people are using it.
Yeah.
And the results will either support your hypothesis or tell you you need to go back to the drawing board.
Interesting.
So it's just like conducting a controlled experiment in a lab.
So you're saying like every new feature,
Yeah.
every marketing campaign,
Mm-hmm.
even a whole new business model,
Yeah.
it can all be treated as an experiment.
Exactly. The point is to constantly be gathering data to validate your assumptions.
And make informed decisions.
Right.
And it's funny that Zappos story is a perfect example of this.
Oh, yeah.
Like the idea of testing whether people would buy shoes online
Uh-huh.
by literally buying and shipping shoes from local stores only after somebody ordered them.
Yeah,
That's genius.
it is.
And it highlights a key takeaway for our listeners.
What's that?
Don't get so caught up in trying to build the perfect product from the start.
Right.
Focus on learning what your customer actually needs.
Exactly.
Now, I can see how this would be like a game changer for new businesses, but what about companies that have already been around for a while?
Yeah.
Can they use this too?
Oh, absolutely. Whether you're launching a new product or exploring a new market,
Okay.
the lean startup principles can be really valuable.
Like Toyota.
Yeah.
They're this huge company.
Right.
And they're using lean principles for continuous improvement and efficiency.
Exactly. The lean startup provides a framework for any business to stay ahead of the curve
Hey.
and adapt to those ever-changing customer needs.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
I'm feeling pretty energized by all this.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these, seemingly simple principles
Yeah.
can completely change the way we think about building and growing businesses.
And to think we've got even more to uncover in the next part of our deep dive.
I know. I'm excited for it. Welcome back.
Okay, so we've laid the foundation
Yeah.
with validated learning, the build, measure, learn loop.
Right.
Now let's talk about how we actually use these principles to grow a startup.
Right. So that's where this whole idea of growth hacking comes in.
Oh yeah, growth hacking.
Yeah.
I've heard that term thrown around.
Yeah.
Is it like those viral marketing campaigns that just seem to explode out of nowhere?
Exactly. It's about being super resourceful,
Okay,
experimenting with different channels to reach customers,
right.
and constantly analyzing the data to see what's actually working.
So it's not just throwing money at advertising.
No,
You're being smart about it.
exactly. You're trying to find those clever shortcuts to reach the right people.
Okay, so it's all about finding that growth engine.
Yeah, that's a key part of it.
Okay, is that like a metaphor for your marketing strategy?
It's bigger than just marketing.
Okay.
It's the core mechanism that's driving your sustainable growth.
Okay.
So it could be a viral loop
Okay.
or a paid acquisition strategy
I see.
or even like a content marketing machine.
So it's whatever's bringing in the most new customers.
Yeah. Once you figure out what that engine is,
Mhm.
you can focus all your energy on optimizing it.
Right. And I bet that testing mindset that we talked about earlier comes in handy here.
Oh, absolutely. Growth hacking is all about applying that build, measure, learn loop to your growth strategies.
I see.
So you're constantly tweaking things,
Yeah.
experimenting,
Right.
and letting the data guide your decisions.
So the lean startup also talks about this idea of building a minimum viable bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Okay, minimum viable bureaucracy.
Yeah.
That sounds almost like an oxymoron.
I know, right?
Isn't bureaucracy like the enemy of startups?
You're not... Too much red tape can really stifle innovation,
Yeah,
make things move super slow.
for sure.
But as a company grows,
Right.
you need some structure
Mhm.
to keep things running smoothly.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where you have enough structure to support growth,
Mm,
but not so much that it kills creativity.
exactly. And the lean startup principles we've been talking about,
Okay.
they can actually be applied to organizational design.
Really?
Yeah. So instead of having that rigid hierarchy,
Right.
you can build a more adaptable and flexible organization.
So less like a pyramid, more like a network where teams have more autonomy.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about what they call decentralized decision-making.
So empowering teams to make decisions without needing like a million layers of approval.
Right. And this becomes even more important as the company gets bigger.
Yeah, things get more complex.
You need systems in place to make decisions quickly and effectively.
Otherwise, you just get stuck in endless meetings.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Right. So it's all about fostering a culture of ownership and accountability
Exactly.
where everyone feels empowered to contribute.
And that kind of environment is like a breeding ground for innovation
I see.
and sustainable growth because it allows people to take risks
Mm.
and learn from their mistakes without being afraid of getting punished.
Right. Which brings us back to that idea from the lean startup
Yeah.
about embracing failure
Yes,
as a learning opportunity.
exactly. Failure is not the opposite of success.
Okay.
It's a stepping stone on the path to success.
So it's like a shift in perspective
Yeah.
instead of being afraid of failure.
You see it as valuable data.
Exactly. You're learning from those mistakes
Okay.
and using them to get better.
So you're actually encouraging experimentation
Yeah.
instead of punishing failure.
Right. And that's a pretty radical concept for a lot of businesses.
For sure. But that's the kind of culture that leads to breakthroughs.
Exactly. Because it creates an environment where people feel safe to try new things.
Right.
Even if they don't always work out.
So it's not just about building a successful product.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating a company where innovation is baked into the DNA.
Right. The lean startup really emphasizes this idea of continuous innovation.
Right.
It's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's about building a company that's constantly adapting and evolving.
Because like you're building an engine that's constantly learning and improving,
Yeah.
always searching for that next breakthrough.
That's a great way to put it. And these principles can be applied to every part of a business.
Right.
From product development
Yeah.
to marketing
Hmm.
to customer service. So it's not just about what you build.
Right.
It's about how you build it.
Exactly. And that's what makes the lean startup such a valuable resource.
Yeah.
It's like a blueprint for building a company that can thrive in any environment.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
I'm feeling pretty energized by all this.
Me too.
Mhm.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple principles
Yeah.
can totally change the way we think about business.
And we still have more to uncover.
I know.
In the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we'll explore some of the more advanced concepts from the lean startup.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Yeah.
It's the final part of our deep dive into the lean startup.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
From validated learning
Right?
to growth hacking
Mm-hmm.
to building a minimum viable bureaucracy.
Yeah.
We've covered so many insightful concepts.
I feel like my brain is bursting with new ideas.
Yeah.
So what else does the lean startup have in store for us?
Well, let's start with this technique called the 5 whys.
5 whys. Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So it's a really simple but powerful way to get to the root cause of a problem.
Okay, so it's like detective work,
Yeah, kind of.
but for your business.
Exactly. So let's say you're noticing a dip in customer engagement.
Okay.
So the first why is, why are customers less engaged?
Okay.
And maybe the answer is, they're not finding the content relevant.
Okay, so then you'd ask.
Why aren't they finding the content relevant?
Right.
And the answer might be, because we're not tailoring the content to their needs.
Interesting.
So by repeatedly asking why,
Mhm.
you can uncover these hidden assumptions or underlying issues.
Okay. I love that it forces you to really think critically
Yeah.
and not just jump to conclusions.
Right.
And I bet you could use this in all sorts of areas.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Not just for customer engagement.
From product development to
Right.
marketing to
Yeah.
even team dynamics,
Yeah.
the 5 whys can help you pinpoint the real problem.
So you can actually fix it.
Okay, so speaking of understanding customer behavior,
Yeah.
the lean startup also talks about cohort analysis.
Yeah.
Cohort analysis.
Mhm.
Am I going to need a statistics degree to understand this one?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It is a data-driven approach,
Okay.
but it's not super complicated.
Okay.
So a cohort is basically a group of users
Okay.
who share a common characteristic,
Right.
like maybe the month they signed up for your service.
Okay.
So instead of looking at all your customers as one big group,
Right.
you're breaking them down into smaller groups
Gotcha.
based on when they join,
And then you can track these cohorts over time.
right, and see how their behavior changes.
So you might compare the retention rate of users who signed up in January
Yeah,
versus those who signed up in February.
exactly. And that can help you identify those critical points where you might be losing users.
And then make adjustments
Right.
to improve retention.
Maybe there was a change to your product in February
Right.
that's impacting how people are using it.
I see. It's like having a magnifying glass for your customer data.
Yeah,
You can really zoom in and see those subtle trends
that's a great way to put it.
that you might miss otherwise.
Yeah, and the insights you get from cohort analysis can help you with everything,
Okay.
from product development
Mhm.
to marketing campaigns.
So it's about using data not just to see what your customers are doing,
Mm-hmm.
but to understand why they're doing it.
Exactly. Now, the lean startup also talks about this really interesting concept
Okay.
called an innovation sandbox.
Innovation sandbox.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing. What is that?
So it's about carving out a safe space,
Okay.
whether it's physical or virtual,
Mm-hmm.
where teams can experiment without the fear of failure.
Oh, so you're giving people permission to take risks
Right.
and try out new ideas without worrying about messing things up.
Exactly. It could be like a dedicated space
Okay.
with resources for prototyping.
Gotcha.
Or it could just be like a set of guidelines
Right.
that encourages experimentation and makes it clear that it's okay to fail.
Yeah, you're basically embedding a culture of innovation into the company's DNA.
Yeah, you're sending a clear message.
What is this?
It's okay to try new things,
Right.
to fail fast,
Mm.
and to learn from those mistakes.
And that's how those real breakthroughs happen.
Exactly. It makes me think of those tech companies
Yeah.
that have these dedicated labs or teams
Right.
for exploring those crazy ideas.
Right. They know that not everything's going to be a hit,
Mhm.
but that one game-changing innovation
Yeah.
make all the difference.
And it's not just for big companies either.
Right.
Any business can benefit from this mindset.
So it's about fostering that culture of experimentation
Yeah.
and learning.
Where people feel comfortable testing their assumptions and pushing the boundaries.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible.
I have.
I feel like I've learned so much.
I'm glad.
And I've got a whole new framework for thinking about business and innovation.
The Lean Startup offers a lot of practical advice for anyone who's trying to navigate the world of entrepreneurship.
It's not just about launching a product.
No.
It's about building a system for continuous learning and adapting and growing.
And that's how you thrive in today's world.
No matter what industry you're in
Right.
or what challenges you're facing.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
If you could apply just one principle from the Lean Startup to your own life or your work,
Yeah.
what would it be and why?
That's a great question.
So take a moment to think about that.
Yeah.
And let us know what resonates with you.
I hope this deep dive has inspired you to embrace a more experimental approach.
Me too. Thanks for joining us on this journey
It's been fun.
through the world of the Lean Startup.
Yeah.
Remember, keep learning,
Keep testing.
keep iterating.